I know you guys probably see a bunch of videos on the best settings and you're maybe a bit all over the place on what you should be using, so I'll be straight up with you. I change my settings all the time. And I know YouTubers, including myself, always say stick to certain settings and do not change, which I do agree with. Staying with settings will make things much better for you in the long term and you are going to get used to them much faster, but personally, I change a lot. And there are many reasons why I change. Mostly I mess around with them just to try something new and see how it feels, but there are times where I just feel slow, feel like I want to go for clips for YouTube, and so I'll change them. And once again, yes, I know if you feel slow, you should not change your settings. I just do. I don't know what to tell you. The phrase do as I say and not as I do is perfect for the situation. I'm at a point where I just kind of play the game for fun. I don't really care about ranking up anymore. I'm just enjoying the content side of things. Anyway, with that out of the way, I wanted to show you my settings, but I also wanted to cover the different settings I use for different things. I have my standard settings, the ones I use when I want to go for clips, and then I have a mix of the two. So 3 different sets of settings. But before we dive into those, a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Dead Side Club, a brand new online side-scrolling battle game. Join a cartel that suits you and use special weapons and different skills to create a battle that no one else can. Explore different maps and battlefields while trying to survive the fast-paced world and all the action that goes on around you. A game with various content such as strategic dungeons, towers, raids, and rifts are available for you to obtain equipment like many special and unique costumes such as Dinosaur and Daft Helmet. The game is free to play, supports 12 languages, and even has a sort of creative mode called God Mode, where you can make the map, the rewards, and even the monsters. You become a god. It's the perfect side shooting game that even people who aren't good at FPS games can enjoy. This is a game I can very easily see myself sinking a lot of time into because I grew up on side shooters. That was the game I played throughout all of intermediate and high school because I wasn't great at FPS games. So I am genuinely pretty excited for when this comes out. And if you don't want to miss out, head over to Steam using the link in the description and add it to your wishlist so that you can jump straight in on release day. To start with, let's go over the things that don't change throughout the 3 settings. In case any of you are wondering about these, I'll flash them on the screen for a few seconds, but getting into it, the first thing that doesn't really change are my bindings. I sorted these out a while ago and I haven't changed them since. The big things I changed are my boost is now on R1, my power side manual air roll is on L1, air roll left is on square, and air roll right is on circle. The rest is pretty normal. These are things you obviously don't have to change, you just do what you like, but it's what I use and I can't see it changing anytime soon. Then we have the interface. Don't ask me why I've chosen any of these settings, I just did it ages ago and I haven't really touched it since. Then the video settings, these ones actually do have a little bit of purpose. I keep everything on low but add the shaders and the dynamic shadows because I think it looks a little bit nicer when it goes on YouTube. Sometimes I'll turn the texture details up or mess with it a little bit, but these are pretty much how I like to keep things. Audio is just another thing I haven't really changed. I sorted these settings out a while ago and kind of stuck with it. And as for chat, these are the ones I use. That's pretty much it for the things I don't change, but now onto what you're really here for. My standard settings are the ones I default to, and they're the ones I recommend if you're feeling a little bit stuck. I would say these are probably the best all-around settings that I found the entire time I've played the game. And starting off, we have 110 field of view, which I will once again be using for everything, and then a distance of 270, which I also use for pretty much everything, but I have tried out 250 distance, and I actually really like it. Being closer to the ball makes it a little bit easy to get cleaner touches, but it does mean you miss out on a wilder field of view. Anyway, those two pretty much stay the same, but I changed the distance a tiny bit for one of them. But height. Height is something that I change from time to time, but with these settings, I really like 100 height. And then paired with that, you have the -5 angle. Stiffness is at 0.45 and transition speed is at 1.2. Now that's all normal, but the settings that are really going to change the way you feel and play the game are the next ones, the sensitivities and the dead zones. So for my standard settings, I run 1.4 on both steering and aerial sensitivity, and I combine that with a 0.05 controller dead zone. Now, if you're going to take anything away from this video, this is probably the most important part for you to understand. The controller dead zone is by far the most important setting to get right, in my opinion, because I think it changes just way too much if you don't really understand it. The controller dead zone changes how far you need to move the analog stick in order for it to input and affect your car. So the lower the number, the more sensitive the stick will be. Now the issue with this is stick drift. You might think that you should be on the absolute lowest you can go, but then even the slightest breeze on your controller will move the car. And because controllers have a tendency to get even a tiny bit of stick drift when you've done really nothing to them, you will find that staying at the lowest possible setting is going to be really bad. The standard settings use 0.05 because it's low enough that you still feel super responsive, but not too low that a tiny bit of stick drift is going to affect you. This is also what you see a lot of the pro scene using, and which is why I recommend you trying it out if you haven't already. Now, you might be thinking from this, okay, but then if I want to avoid stick drift and keep it at 0.05, why don't I just turn the aerial and steering sensitivity all the way up so I don't get stick drift, but I still get incredibly responsive inputs? And to that I say, yeah, you absolutely can do that, and a lot of people do. But personally, I just find that I feel a bit more in control around this 1.4 range. It's not slow enough that I feel like I'm delayed, and it's not too fast that I feel like I can't control my touches. This is definitely something you should work on yourself, but I would say that I'm pretty happy here, and I think this is a really nice standard to work off of if you don't know where to go. Lastly, we have the dodge dead zone. Now this affects just how much you need to move the analog stick to input a dodge. So if you struggle to aerial without accidentally backflipping, I would say you should bump this up a little bit. Once again, the lower the number, the more sensitive it's going to be. So if you put it all the way down, you are probably accidentally going to backflip quite a lot. 0.5 works for me, but I will change this up a little bit if I find myself backflipping a lot. These are the standard settings I'm going to use if I'm just playing ranked and not really worrying about getting clips for YouTube or anything. And they're the ones I recommend to anyone looking to change up their own settings. But now onto the freestyler settings. So with these settings, there's a different goal altogether. Everything is changed up a little bit, and the camera actually can feel quite low to some people as you have 90 height mixed with a -3 angle. But I found these from one of my favorite freestylers, Thanovic, and have loved them ever since. But the biggest difference is the control dead zone. Now, a lot of freestylers tend to actually bring this up quite a bit and sit around the 0.15 to 0.30 range. The reason they actually choose to bring it up and make their controllers less responsive is so that their touches aren't affected by the slightest movement. By bringing this up, they don't have to worry about small movements changing the direction of the ball and are able to do things like flip cancels and stalls a lot easier. Now, a good way to understand this is if you've ever tried to stall, try it first on 0.05 and then try it again on 0.15, and you will 100% understand why the higher dead zone is more beneficial. So the goal of these settings is just going for clips. I'm not really worried about winning or losing, and while these can be competitive settings, I'm not certain they would be the best for comp. Another quick thing to mention is that because I brought the controller dead zone up, I did choose to bring the sensitivities up a bit as well, just so I still felt like I wasn't insanely slow, but I still had that control over the ball that I liked. And lastly, the settings that are a little bit in the middle of these two. On the camera end, they're once again pretty standard, not too much to talk about there, but for the controller settings, it's a mix of both. You have the highest sense both sitting at 2, and the controller dead zone is slightly raised up to 0.07. Now the reason for stopping at 0.07 is that this is for me where it feels like I have that perfect balance. I feel like stalls are easy to hit here without having to compromise on speed or input delay. Everything feels right. These settings are ones I will use if I just want to change things up. I don't mainly go for clips with them or mainly grind ranked. I just kind of use them whenever I want to spice things up. The big thing about me, I'm sure some of you might know if you've ever tuned into my stream, is that I am a massive placebo player. If something is off, I always feel like I can fix it by changing my settings. And that is not a great way to be, but it's the way I am, so I just thought I'd be completely straight up with you guys. These are settings I find myself coming back to all the time, but then again, you could stop by my stream and there would be a very high chance I was using something completely different just because I felt like it. So while I may not stick to one set of settings, I highly recommend you do if you're trying to get better. But to quickly wrap things up, those are the settings that I most often bounce between, and I hope they helped out some of you guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.